Everyone saw the German Shepherd push the toddler away from the sandbox. Everyone thought they knew what it meant. Not one of them was right. The Brennan family had been using that sandbox since June. Sophie was 22 months and she had a system. 10 minutes with the dump trucks, 10 minutes with the bucket set, and then she would try to eat sand until someone stopped her. Kira had watched this routine so many times. She could run it in her sleep. She was watching it from the patio chair on the Thursday afternoon in late August when Griff did what Griff did. Griff was 4 years old, a working-line German Shepherd, the kind of dog people described as serious. He was not a dog who played. He was a dog who watched. He had been watching Sophie from the moment she came outside, from his usual position at the edge of the patio, back legs straight, chest forward, head moving with Sophie the way a radar dish moves with a signal. Kira had stopped thinking about this. It was just how Griff stood when Sophie was outside. Then Sophie turned toward the far corner of the sandbox where the bucket set was. She took 3 steps, and Griff was off the patio in one movement. He crossed the yard and put himself between Sophie and the sandbox corner, sideways, and Sophie walked into his flank and bounced back and sat down hard and looked up at him. He did not back away. He stood over her, sideways, weight-balanced, and looked at the corner of the sandbox and then at her. And then at the corner and would not move. Sophie started to cry. Kira was off the chair and across the yard. "Griff, move." He looked at her. Stayed. She took Sophie by the arm and stood her up. Griff stepped with them, keeping his body between Sophie and that corner of the sandbox, with the focused economy of an animal that has been told to stay on a mark. Her neighbor, Marcus, was watching from his yard over the fence. "Your dog just knocked her down." Kira was watching Griff. He didn't knock her down, he blocked her. Marcus watched the dog for a moment. "What's he looking at?" Kira didn't answer because she didn't know. She put Sophie on her hip and looked at the corner of the sandbox. The sand looked like sand. The dump trucks were in the corner. The bucket set. Nothing she could see. She filed it under. Griff being strange, she went inside. Griff did it again on Saturday. Sophie toward the sandbox corner, Griff off the patio before she was halfway there, body sideways, blocking. Sophie fell to her knees and cried. Kira's mother-in-law, Patricia, was visiting. She watched from the patio. "That dog knocked the child down twice now. He's resource guarding. He thinks the sandbox is his. You need to deal with that before it becomes something worse." Patricia had 30 years of experience raising children, and she said this with the confidence of someone who has never once been wrong about a dog. Kira heard it and felt its logic. Resource guarding was real. Blocking was real. Her husband, Sean, came home that evening and Kira told him about both incidents. Sean called his college roommate who bred working dogs. The roommate said, "If a shepherd is blocking a child's path to a space, that is territorial behavior and it needs to be corrected now." 3 different sources. 3 aligned conclusions. Griff went on leash outside and stayed tied to the patio post. On Monday, Sophie went to the sandbox. No Griff. She went directly to the corner. She was playing for 11 minutes when Kira noticed Sophie stop and look at her hand. Kira crossed the yard. Sophie had a red mark on her right palm, small, circular, slightly raised. She'd shown it to Kira before, and Kira had called it a bug bite. It was 3 days old now, and it was larger, and there was a line extending from it. The pediatrician's office had her in within the hour. Dr. Linda Forsyth looked at it for about 4 seconds. "Infected wound with early lymphangitis," she asked when it happened. Kira said she thought a bug bite 3 days ago, maybe in the sandbox. Dr. Forsyth looked at the chart. She looked at the sandbox corner description Kira had mentioned. She asked, "Has your dog been trying to keep your daughter away from that area?" Kira felt the air leave the room. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. She went home and took a garden trowel and dug in the corner of the sandbox. Under 8 inches of sand, she found a shard of glass, a rusted nail, and the remains of what appeared to be a broken ceramic pot fragment with a jagged edge. Something had migrated up through the sand. Or Sophie had been digging. It didn't matter which. What mattered was that Griff had known the corner was wrong for at least 5 days before the wound appeared. Not resource guarding. Not territorial aggression. He had been blocking her from going back to the source of an injury she didn't know she'd sustained. Dr. Forsyth prescribed antibiotics. The lymphangitis resolved completely in 6 days. She said, very plainly, that they had caught it before it became systemic. That 2 more days would have meant IV antibiotics and a very different conversation. Has your dog ever done something you couldn't explain until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Sean dug out the entire sandbox and replaced the sand that weekend. Griff watched from the patio without moving. When Sophie went to the sandbox on the following Thursday, clean sand, bucket set, dump trucks, Griff came off the patio and walked to the edge and stood there, watching, and did not block. He had been waiting for them to fix it. He sat at the edge of the sandbox and watched Sophie fill her bucket and dump it and fill it again. His ears moved with the sound of her. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If these stories matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next. 1. His tail did not wag. That was not the language he spoke. He just watched. And the sand poured. And everything was clean. And he stayed.